So after this attack, Ronald placed the bodies on the couch and he covered them in their coats, except for Sheila, who was wrapped in a tablecloth. And then Michael and Trey were actually wrapped in tarps and then left down the street. Ronald then left the house and he went to Sears department store to pick up the gifts that he had actually ordered for Christmas for his family. Well, hey, howdy, hi, welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for stopping by to join me today. I really do appreciate it. My name is Ellie, and I'm a witch, and this over here is my teaching assistant, Andy. And today is day 3/6 of Killmas. I accidentally recorded 3 of these videos with no audio. So this is take 2 for this video, the last video, and the video before it. And so we're doing 9 days of Killmas instead, so I'm going to do a little 3/6 for this video, and then tomorrow will be 7, and then we're going to count properly from there. But with that, that means that my boy needs 2 more presents to add to the tree to make it 6. And just like that, he has 6 presents now, and then we will continue the ordinary way tomorrow. But today is a true crime case that takes place the day after Christmas, so I'm calling it Christmas related for my Killmas series. Today is a little bit of a sad case. It does involve family murder, mentions of sexual assault, and mentions of sexual assault against a child. Completely understand if that's not something you're interested in. I do have plenty of other videos coming out. I have cryptid videos on my channel, I have history videos, and I have some other true crime that isn't child related or sexual assault related. So if you don't want to hear that, I get it. But I do have other videos on my channel if you're interested. And of course, I'm continuing my Killmas series going forward. I have more true crime cases coming up, but I do also have a couple that are more Christmas related. So if you're interested in that, definitely check those out. And yeah, let's jump into the video. So today's case that we're going to be talking about is the case of Ronald Gene Simmons. Now, Ronald was born July 15th, 1940 in Chicago, Illinois, to parents Loretta and William Simmons. Unfortunately, his father did suffer a stroke in January of 1943. However, just a year later, his mother remarried to a man named William Griffin. Now, William worked for the Army, and as such, the family was relocated several times, and it was around 1946 that the family first was moved to Arkansas, and then over the next decade, they've been moved around inside of the state several more times. Ronald chose to drop out of school in 1957 and he decided to join the Navy, and it was while he was in the Navy that he met a woman named Bersabe Rebecca Becky Ulibarri. Now, this couple would actually get married in 1960 in New Mexico, and Ronald would leave the Navy in 1963 to join the Air Force instead, where he would spend the remainder of his 20 years. He'd end up retiring in 1979 to go back home to New Mexico, where his wife had been raising their 7 children together. However, it was 1981 when the family was uprooted and Ronald actually moved them all to Arkansas. So the reason for this abrupt move was that Ronald was being investigated by New Mexico's Department of Human Services. This was due to allegations that Ronald was sexually abusing his 17-year-old daughter Sheila. So when they moved to Arkansas, the home that they moved to was not particularly pleasant. It was 2 old-style mobile homes that were placed together to kind of create one home. And in that, they didn't have any plumbing, so Ronald forced the family to dig 3 cesspits so that they had something. In Arkansas, Ronald did not have a steady job, and instead he was on and off with different locations. At one point, he was forced to resign from a Woodland Motor Freight after there were several complaints of inappropriate sexual advances towards his female coworkers, but he did have plenty of jobs after that. In 1987, his children Sheila and Billy had actually moved out to start families of their own. That left 7 remaining family members in the mobile home. It was December 22nd of 1987 that this story truly begins. That morning, Ronald killed his wife Rebecca and their oldest son Gene Jr., and he did that with a crowbar and a pistol. He then turned on his 3-year-old granddaughter Barbara and he strangled her to death. He then took the 3 bodies and he put them into one of the cesspits that the families had dug. He then waited for his other children to return home from school, and at which point he would tell them that he had gifts for all of them, but he wanted to give it to them separately. This made his next victim his 17-year-old daughter, Loretta, who he strangled, and then he held her head underwater in a rain barrel. Eddie, Marianne, and Becky were all killed in the same manner, and the 4 children's bodies were thrown in the same cesspit with the other 3 family members. He then decided to phone Billy and Sheila and invited them and their families to come over for a Christmas get-together on December 26th. So on December 26th, Billy was the first to arrive, and Ronald killed Billy and his wife Renata by shooting them. Then their son Trey was strangled and drowned. Unfortunately, Trey was not even 2 years old at the time of the attack. When Sheila and her own family arrived, they were not any luckier. Sheila and her husband Daniel were also shot to death, and then Ronald turned on their 2 children, 7-year-old Sylvia, who was actually Ronald's biological daughter with Sheila due to his years of sexual abuse, and then their almost 2-year-old son Michael, and he ended up strangling both children to death. So after this attack, Ronald placed the bodies on the couch and he covered them in their coats, except for Sheila, who was wrapped in a tablecloth. And then Michael and Trey were actually wrapped in tarps and then left down the street. Ronald then left the house and he went to Sears department store to pick up the gifts that he had actually ordered for Christmas for his family. He then went to a local bar to drink before he returned home, and then for the rest of that night and then the rest of the following day, Ronald stayed home and he drank beer and he just watched TV. Then on December 28th, Ronald went to a Walmart where he purchased yet another firearm that he would use in his next attack. Ronald's first stop after this was a law firm where a woman named Kathy Kendrick worked, and Ronald had made advances towards Kathy, but she had rejected him. So when he got to the law firm, he walked directly in, straight to her office, and then shot her and left. The next destination was an oil company that was owned by a man named Russell Rusty Taylor. So Rusty also owned Sinclair Mini Mart, which is where Ronald had recently been forced to resign from, and he ended up shooting Rusty, who fortunately did survive. However, Ronald also ended up shooting 2 other employees that happened to be in the building at that time. So one of those bullets did miss the employee, however the other one killed a man named James Chafin. His next stop was Sinclair Mini Mart, where he ended up shooting and wounding 2 more people. And then his last stop was Woodline Motor Freight, where he shot his former supervisor twice. She did survive, however, and it was actually here that Ronald at gunpoint demanded that the other employees call the police, and then he just waited. And when the police did arrive, he surrendered his gun with no resistance. So given the heinousness of the crime and of course Ronald's strange behavior, he had to go through a psych eval, but he was deemed sane and fit to stand trial. He did end up having 2 separate trials, the first one being for the murders of Kathy and James, and he was convicted and sentenced to death on May 12th of 1988. And Ronald actually made a statement supporting the sentence. He said, quote, "I, Ronald Gene Simmons Sr., want it to be known that it is my wish and my desire that absolutely no action by anyone be taken to appeal or in any way change this sentence. It is further respectfully requested that this sentence be carried out expeditiously." End quote. His next trial was for the murder of his 14 family members, for which he was also sentenced to death by lethal injection on February 10th of 1989. So during the second trial, Ronald actually punched the prosecutor in the face and attempted to get the court deputy's gun, and that was because the prosecutor had entered in a letter that was sent from Ronald to his daughter Sheila, the contents of which were about how upset Ronald was that Sheila had openly said that her daughter Sylvia was Ronald's because of the abuse, and he ended up going on to say that he would see her in hell for the sins that she had also committed. So even though that he did have this outburst over this letter, he still refused to appeal his sentence. And at one point he was actually involved in another case that was Whitmore v. Arkansas, and it was actually regarding another death row inmate named Jonas Whitmore, and he actually attempted to force an appeal in Ronald's case. So it was unsuccessful, and actually this is a point of contention. Ronald ended up having to be kept away from the other inmates just because his life was constantly in danger because of this lack of desire to appeal his case. The other death row inmates kind of saw it as something bad, like if he wasn't going to appeal, then their own appeals were going to be denied. However, on May 31st of 1990, then Arkansas Governor Bill Clinton signed Ronald's execution warrant, and on June 25th of 1990, he was put to death by lethal injection and was then buried in a potter's field in Lincoln County, Arkansas. So that's all I have for you today. That was a very unique case in my mind, especially because he actually went to trial, and a lot of people who refuse to appeal or, immediately surrender. They'll plead guilty and they don't have to go through the trial process. But he went through the trial process and then still refused the appeals and supported the sentence, which he could have gotten the same sentence if he had just pled guilty anyway. But that's why I thought it was really interesting. Coming up, there are still some sad cases. I don't think I go into too many details, like gruesome wise. I don't think. Don't hold me to that. I do have several more true crime videos to do. I think 4 more, 5 more in this series. Anyway, I do also have Christmas tales coming up where I'm going to be telling you a little bit about the history of the tale, and then I'm just going to read it to you. And then on Christmas Eve, I will be reading 'Twas the Night Before Christmas, give you a little bit of history on it. And there you go. That'll be really fun. I'm excited for that. Other than that, I don't really have much for you. If you liked the video, hit that thumbs up button. I really do appreciate it. And if you didn't, hit that thumbs down and tell me what you think I could improve in the comments. I appreciate that as well. And with all that being said, I hope that you all have a great rest of your night, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye.